The number some people know about carbon dioxide in a building is the one on the sticker that says below 1000 ppm. That number isn't wrong, but it's incomplete. The research on what carbon dioxide actually does to the people inside a building is more specific, more interesting, and considerably more actionable than just a single threshold number. This video covers what the numbers mean, the ones that are worth watching, and why measuring CO2 in one spot tells you almost nothing useful about your building. Hello, I'm Nicholas Napp, and carbon dioxide is one of the most useful signals in a small commercial building, because it's simultaneously an indicator of ventilation performance and an indicator of cognitive impact on the people inside the building. One measurement, two meanings, totally worth understanding properly. Carbon dioxide, or CO2, in an occupied building is almost entirely produced by the people that are in the building. Outside air sits at roughly 420 parts per million, or ppm. Every person in the building exhales CO2 at about 40,000 parts per million. So if the building's ventilation is bringing enough outside air in to dilute what the occupants are producing, carbon dioxide indoors stays close to the outdoor baseline. But if ventilation is inadequate, which it almost always is, the carbon dioxide will accumulate over time. That's the basics of it. So when you measure carbon dioxide indoors, you're not really measuring carbon dioxide in the abstract. You're measuring how much of the air in the room has already passed through someone's lungs. And the higher the number, the more recycled the air is. There are four thresholds worth mentioning. 400 to 600 parts per million is the outdoor air range. If your indoor reading is in this band, your ventilation is either excellent, the building is empty, or all of your windows are open. 600 to 1000 is the normal band for an occupied building with adequate ventilation. Nothing to flag. 1000 to 1400 is the range where ASHRAE 62.1, the ventilation standard, considers the building underventilated for its occupancy. It doesn't mean that the air is dangerous, it just means that the ventilation rate is not keeping up with the people, and you should probably find out why. Above 1400 is where the cognitive research starts showing measurable impact. Decision-making, concentration, information usage all drop in ways that replicate across multiple studies. Harvard's COG-FX study and LBNL's earlier work both found the same pattern at these thresholds. Above 2,500, cognitive performance on some complex tasks falls by half. That's not a marginal impact. That's the difference between a functioning conference room and a room where nobody's going to remember the decisions they made in it. I want to stay on the cognitive performance research for a moment because the implications are larger than most people realize. The Harvard Center for Health and the Global Environment ran a study in 2016 that put office workers through standardized cognitive tests at different carbon dioxide levels. At 400 ppm, essentially outdoor air conditions, they scored normally. At 1400 ppm, a CO2 level you'll find in a completely normal conference room mid-afternoon, they scored 15% lower on average. On more complex decision-making domains, crisis response, strategy use, information search, the drop was larger. Earlier work at Lawrence Berkeley Lab had found similar results at 2500 ppm. What this means in a practical sense is that an office with mediocre ventilation is not just uncomfortable, it is quietly reducing the quality of work the people inside are capable of producing. The same is true in classrooms, where student performance and attendance both track with ventilation rates in several independent studies. CO2, carbon dioxide, it's not the only variable, but it is a reliable proxy for ventilation, and ventilation is a reliable driver of cognitive performance. But there is a catch. CO2 is not uniform across a building. Carbon dioxide levels tend to be very highly local because they depend on the number of people in a given room, the size of that room, and the ventilation rate of that specific zone, and what the people are doing. A conference room during a long meeting will climb past 2000 ppm regularly, while the lobby 10 feet away sits at 600. A classroom at the end of the school day will read differently than the same classroom at 9 a.m. A yoga studio during an 8 a.m. class, windows closed, is a real outlier. One sensor in the lobby will tell you nothing about the building. It tells you about the lobby. So a proper carbon dioxide assessment in a small commercial building requires zone-level sensors at every regularly occupied space, reporting continuously over weeks and months so that you can see a daily pattern and the seasonal pattern. And this is a case where tier matters. The Tier 1, the single spot sensor, is the wrong tool for a whole building question about carbon dioxide. A healthy CO2 profile in a commercial building has a very characteristic shape. Overnight, the building sits close to an outdoor baseline, around 400-500 ppm. As occupants arrive, CO2 rises gradually, not sharply. During the day, it should plateau in the 600 to 1,000 range, with occasional bumps above that quickly clear, for example a meeting room, but after hours it should drop back to the baseline. So rise, plateau, recovery. An unhealthy profile looks quite different. It might rise sharply in the morning and never come down during the day, meaning that ventilation is undersized for the occupancy. It might plateau above 1,000 ppm for hours, suggesting the ventilation rate is wrong by design, or the outside air damper is stuck. It might spike in one zone and never recover, pointing at a specific room with a specific problem. Each of those signatures has a very specific fix, a very specific look in the data, and none of them are visible without continuous zone and room level data. Carbon dioxide, also called CO2, is a proxy for ventilation, and ventilation is a proxy for the health and cognitive performance of everybody in a building. One sensor can't manage an entire building. It can't measure it. A continuous zone and room level data layer does. The thresholds are worth knowing. The shape is worth recognizing. More information with ASHRAE 62.1 citations and the Harvard CogFX study walkthrough are on FractionalBAS.com. The next video in this series covers humidity, which is the IAQ indoor air quality variable most often ignored, and the most often where the expensive problems start. Thanks for watching.